Let's continue yesterday's book. By convention, the first instruction in a block is a special instruction transaction that starts a new coin owned by the creator of the block. This is an incentive for nodes to support the network and provides a way to initially distribute coins into circulation. Since there is no central authority to issue them, the steady addition of a constant amount of new coins is analogous to gold miners expanding resources to aid gold to circulation. In our case, it is CPU time and electricity that is expanded. The incentive can also be funded with transaction fees. If the output value of a transaction is less than its input value, the difference is the transaction fee that is added to the incentive value of the block containing the transaction. Once a predetermined number of coins have entered the circulation, the incentive can transaction entirely to transaction fees and be completely inflation-free. The incentive may help encourage nodes to stay honest. If a greedy attacker is able to assemble more CPU power than all the honest nodes, he would have to choose between using it to defraud people by stealing back his payments or using it to generate new coins. He ought to find it more preferable to play by the rules, such rules that favor him with more new coins than everyone else combined, than to understand the system and the validity of his own wealth. Once the latest transaction in a coin is built under enough blocks, the spent transactions before it can be discarded to save disk space. To facilitate this without breaking the block's hash, transactions are hashed in a Markov tree, with only the root included in the block's hash. Old blocks can then be compacted by splitting off branches of the tree. The interior hashes do not need to be stored. A block held with no transactions would be about 80 bytes. If we suppose blocks are generated every 10 minutes, 80 bytes. With computer systems typically selling with 2 GB of RAM of 2008 and Moore's law predicting current growth of 1.2 GB per year, storage should not be a problem even if the block headers must be kept in memory. It is possible to verify payments without running a full network node. A user only needs to keep a copy of the block headers of the longest proof of work chain, which he can get by querying network nodes until he is convinced he has the longest chain, and a bind Markov branch linking the transaction to the block is time-stamped in. He can check the transaction for himself, but by linking it to a place in the chain, he can see that the network node has accepted, and the blocks added after it first confirmed the network has accepted. As such, the verification is reliable as long as honest nodes control the network, but it's more vulnerable if the network is overpowered by an attacker, while network nodes can verify transactions for themselves. The simplified method can be fooled by an attacker's fabricate transactions for as long as the attacker can continue to overpower the network. One strategy to protect against this would be to accept alerts from network nodes when they detect an invalid block, promoting the user's software to download the full block and alert the transaction to confirm the inconsistency. Businesses that receive frequent payments will probably still want to run their own nodes for more independent society and quicker verification. Although it would be possible to handle coins individually, it would be unwieldy to make a separate transaction for every cent in a transfer. To allow value to be split and combined, transactions combine multiple inputs and outputs. Normally, there will be either a single input from a larger POS transaction or multiple inputs combining smaller counts, and at most two outputs, one for the payment and one returning the change, if any, back to the sender. It should be noted that a fan-out, where a transaction depends on several transactions, and those transactions depend on many more, is not a problem here. There is never the need to inject a complete stand-alone copy of transactions history. The traditional banking model achieves a level of privacy by limiting access to information to the parties involved and the trusted third party. The necessity to announce all transactions publicly precludes the method, but privacy can still be maintained by breaking the flow of information in another place. By keeping public keys anonymous, the public can see that someone is sending an amount to someone else, but without information linking the transaction to anyone. This is similar to the level of information released by stock exchanges, where the time and the size of individual trades, the type is made public, but without telling who the parties were. As an additional firewall, a new key pair should be used for each transaction to keep them from being linked to a common owner. Some linking is still unavoidable with multi-input transactions, which necessarily reveal that their inputs were owned by the same owner. The risk is that if the owner of a key is revealed, linking could reveal other transactions that belonged to the same owner. We consider the scenario of an attacker trying to generate an alarmate chain faster than the honest chain. Even if this is accomplished, it does not throw the system open to arbitrary changes, such as creating value out of thin air or taking money that never belonged to the attacker. Nodes are not going to accept an invalid transaction as payment, and honestly nodes will never accept a block containing them. An attacker can only try to exchange one of his own transactions to take back money he recently spent. The rise between the honest chain and an attacker chain can be characterized as a binomial random walk. The success event is the honest chain being extended by one block, increasing its lead by add 1, and the failure event is the attacker's chain being expanded by one block, reducing the gap by the probability of an attacker catching up from a given deflict is analogous to a gambler's running problem. Suppose a gambler with unlimited credit starts at the deficit and plays potentially an infinite number of trials to try to each break even. We can calculate the probability he never reaches break even, or that an attacker never catched up with honest chain as follows. Given our assumption that the probability drops in proportion as the number of blocks the attacker has no catch-up with increases, with the odds against him if he doesn't make a lucky run forward early on, his chances become vanishingly small as he falls further behind. We now consider how long the recipient of a new transaction needs to wait before being sufficiently certain the sender can change the transaction. We assume the sender is an attacker who wants to make the recipient believe he paid him for a while, then switch it to play back to himself after some time has passed. The receiver will be alerted when that happened, but the sender hopes it will be too late. The receiver generates a new key pair and gives the public key to the sender shortly before signing. This prevents the sender from preparing a chain of blocks ahead of time by working on it continuously until he is lucky enough to get far enough ahead, then executing the transaction at that moment. Once the transaction is sent, The dishonest sender starts working in secret on a parallel chain containing an alert version of its transaction. The recipient waits until the transaction has been added to a block and the blocks have been linked after it. He doesn't know the extra amount of progress the attacker has made, but assuming the honest blocks took the average expected time per block, the attacker's potential progress will be a Bayesian distribution with expected value. We have proposed a system for electronic transactions without relying on trust. We started with the usual framework of coins made from digital signatures, which provides strong control of ownership but is incomplete without a way to prevent double spending. To solve this, we propose a peer-to-peer network using proof of work to record the public history of transactions that quickly becomes computationally critical for an attacker to change if honest nodes control a majority of CPU power. The network is robust in its unstructured, simplicity. Nodes works all at once with little coordination. They do not need to be identified, since messages are not routed to any particular place and only need to be delivered on a best effort basis. Nodes can leave and rejoin the network at will, accepting the proof of work chain as proof of what happened while they were gone. They vote with their CPU power, expressing their acceptance of valid blocks by working on extending them and rejecting invalid blocks by refusing to work on them. Any needed rules and incentives can be enforced with this consensus mechanism.